Hello, and welcome to the fourth episode of Aging While Black, a discourse at the intersection of aging and race. Hi, I'm Janet Spears, the CEO of MetaFund, and I am deeply honored today to be joining Raymond Jetson for this thought provoking conversation that's part of this powerful YouTube series, exploring the themes from his groundbreaking book, Aging While Black, a radical reimagination of aging and race in America. The series has been created to create space for authentic intergenerational conversations. At MetaFund, we support organizations and movements working to advance racial equity and justice so that this conversation sits right at the heart of our mission. We believe that how a society treats its elders reflects its deepest values. Of course, the African concept of it takes a village has long been a cornerstone of the Black community, a recognition that the collective wisdom, shared responsibilities, and intergenerational care creates the strongest foundation for human flourishing. Black communities have always understood something profound, that elders are not a burden to be managed, but treasured to be honored, repositories of wisdom, and essential threads in the fabric of community resilience. Black communities continue to innovate, care, preserve wisdom, and build connections even in the face of structural barriers. I am proud supporter of Aging While Black because Raymond's work does not just diagnose problems, it reimagines possibilities. This movement is creating the language and the vision that we need to transform how our society approaches aging, especially for communities that have been systemically excluded from traditional narratives about growing older with dignity and support. So speaking of Raymond, let me properly introduce our guest. Raymond A. Jetson is the founder of Aging While Black, a national movement reimagining aging in the intersection of race and justice. An AARP Purpose Prize winner, Raymond has dedicated decades of his leadership in public policy, civic innovation, and community transformation. He also founded Metamorphosis, a nonprofit committed to transforming urban communities from the inside out. A former legislative Louisiana state legislator and a long-term pastor, his work is rooted in amplifying the voices and values of our Black elders. Welcome, Raymond.
Janet, it is such a joy to share this space with you. And I want to thank you for saying yes. One of the things that I have appreciated about our friendship is your willingness to explore how do we get to yes, if there is value and if there is meaning. And so I thank you for making time for this. I would share that this conversation is important to me, not only because the conversation aligns so effectively with the mission and the work that you lead and the Meta team so passionately execute, uh, but it's at the heart of conversations that you and I have had
Yes.
about community and about the future, and about the values that ground us and how we truly are there for one another. And so I am so grateful to be able to share this space with you. Uh, I've been in public life, Janet, for 42 years.
Whew.
And I share with folks that it is this this oxymoron that nothing that I'd done in those 42 years had prepared me for what aging while black has become, but
Mhm.
everything that I've done in those 42 years prepared me for what aging while black has become. We started this to have a conversation about the intersection of aging and race in America, deeply rooted in a simple sentence: aging in America is not a race neutral experience.
Amen.
And so how can we talk about that and look at what the data, what the information, what people's lived experience and conditions demonstrate to us clearly? And the conversation took root and started to grow to this emerging national movement where there are people across this country who identify with this goal of amplifying the voices of Black elders and creating an aging ecosystem that allows everybody to thrive as they age. And I'll wrap up my comments by saying I make certain to say every chance I get that I have no illusions of being a world acclaimed author, nor did I write the book to be on anybody's bestseller list. But it was an opportunity to expound upon those things that we so often get to say in sound bites or in keynote addresses or in other things, but to say, here is what we are really thinking when we talk about these words and phrases. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you about the village, and when this wonderful creative team that I work with mentioned the term fractured roots. It just connected with me in a very deep way. So I'm glad to be here with you, my sister, and eagerly await the conversation.
Yeah, I'm very thrilled to be here with you, Raymond. It's been, I don't know, probably 3 years since we first met. And I
Yeah,
felt like it was meant to be when we met one another and having this conversation. I feel like, I'm at that generation of my elder elders are gone, but my elders are still here. And how do I work in this space and do the best work possible so that we can thrive with joy? So thank you so much for this invitation. I'm happy to be moderating this conversation, and I have been pleased and joyful to read your book.
thank you.
So, as we get started, I'm going to let the audience know, for those of you out there, please put any comments or questions that you have for us. It's going to be a conversation back and forth, but mainly to get the thoughts and wisdom from Raymond in this conversation. And please feel free to put your comments in there. So, Raymond, your work has really illuminated both the struggles and, most importantly, the remarkable resilience in the Black community around aging. You write about the tradition of the village, those networks and extended families and church connections and neighborhood supports that have historically transformed aging from this individual struggle into a shared journey of care and wisdom in keeping that. Today, let's explore with you a question that feels both urgent and, for me, hopeful. How do we recalibrate that village that many of us grew up in, that has changed over time? So we're not just mourning what we lost, but we're actively rebuilding those networks of care in our families and our faith communities, in the social organizations to energize or re-energize, maybe is the better thing to say, that foundation of collective strength. So as you write, one thing I'm curious about is there has been this, you write about the visible disappearance of the village in Black communities. What do you see as the key forces that have contributed to this erosion over time that each of us probably have experienced in our own communities?
So there are a number of factors, and I do want to come back to that notion of recalibrating the village because it is a reality that's near and dear to me for a lot of reasons.
Mhm.
I, I think it is important, and I try to find as many ways as possible in the book to write about what might be described as state engineered displacement and disinvestment. It is, we cannot overlook the realities of the policies that have from redlining to urban renewal to changes in the safety network to strategies that destabilize families. That there are these external factors and limiting of opportunities that have systemically had an impact on the lives of Black people in this country. And unfortunately, uh, I've lived long enough to see it again. There used to be a statement that if you live long enough, you'll see the fashions of your youth return. Well, I'm seeing the systemic oppression of people from my youth reappearing as I approach my 70th birthday. And so we can't ignore the systems and structures that are in place that inhibits people's opportunity to access opportunity.
Hmm.
Probably the only gerontology theory that I write about in the book is the one that most resonated with me, and it was cumulative advantage and disadvantage.
Hmm.
And it says that both advantage and disadvantage are cumulative over time. And
Hmm.
so if you start from a place of systemic disadvantage, it is unreasonable to think that people will show up later in life in their old age and do well. And so there are these external factors, but there are also internal factors. Uh, there were cultural traditions and values that were grounded in my family as I grew up by my great grandmother, my great grandfather, my grandmother's grandfathers, aunts and uncles. There were these ways of being as a family that mattered. There were these family gatherings that were not optional, where there was this passing on of information, this getting to know your village and your community. And in so many ways, we have not seen the value in continuing many of those traditions. And certainly my generation has to bear a significant responsibility for that. The anchor institutions, many of the anchor institutions in our community became externally focused or driven by other factors and bells and whistles rather than the well-being of our communities and the people who were a part of it. And so I think that there are these myriad of both external and internal factors that have conspired together to create this really toxic brew that makes being the village extremely difficult in 2025 for so many people. And the irony is, you've heard the old phrase, I can be in a room filled with people and still be lonely.
Hmm.
Well, I can be in all of the organizations in the world and still not have a village
Yes.
and still not have a community that is around me. And so I think, one of the statements that I make often in Jens, and I'll wrap up here, is that before we can recalibrate the village, we need to calibrate the village. We need to stop and be honest about the circumstances we find ourselves in, the realities that are at play, the dynamics both externally and internally, and
Mhm.
then begin to develop a coherent and intentional strategy to begin to build the systems and structures that can support Black life generally and Black aging in 2025 and beyond. Because the way my great grandparents, who are the icons of aging while Black, excuse me, for me, the way they went about engineering their village, there are some principles that work, but the tactics don't in 2025. So,
Right.
how do we grasp the principles while updating the tactics and strategies that are
Yeah.
necessary?
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So true.
So, one of the things that I really enjoy about this is I get to ask you a question, uh, and it's not unusual because it seems as though we met uh, 3 years ago, and I don't know if you saw this, this older brother. I certainly saw this sister that I had not known, but I was certainly connected, and it's like we've had this ongoing conversation
Mhm.
that picks up for 3 years
Yeah.
at varying points. But I know that you have been thoughtful about the village and this uh, decline in real community that you see in your work that you lead at the Meta Fund and its important work, but also just in your lived experience in your personal life. And so, through your lens, Janet, how does the loss of the village show up most clearly in the lives of older Black Americans today? And why should investments be made in communities? How can we invest in communities to change that?
Oh, there's so much to say about this, and first, yeah, it. Thank you very much for that question, and let me give a sense to the audience of where I come from. So I
Yeah.
live and work here in San Francisco, and I have for the last. I've lived here for 30 plus years. I grew up across the bay for a little while in Richmond, and then moved out to what we fondly in our family talk about as country. So we moved out to a little town called Vacaville at the time, and now it's 100,000 plus people. And I think if we think about what has happened over time in my own family, my parents moved from East Texas to California, Great Migration, and we were all in the Bay Area, Richmond, Oakland, San Francisco. That was the village that was created for my older siblings, and I'm younger. And then it got fractured, and we moved out to the wilderness. And we tried to or sought to assimilate. And we came back to the Bay to see relatives, but not to that sense where it was as close as one would have wanted, where you can not just go down the street and see your auntie, but your auntie knows what's happening with you every day, and not just the Sunday church that we'd come back and come to the Bay to go to church. So, what has occurred not only in my own family, but what I have seen happen here in San Francisco, where I had an uncle who had 11 kids, my cousins. They were all here in San Francisco. And over time, they got dispersed. They left the city through urban renewal and those changes.
Hmm.
And that created a sense of isolation for my uncle and my aunt, right? Because their kids all moved away and they weren't all on Third Street. They weren't all in Bayview Hunters Point. They weren't in the Fillmore, the Harlem of the West, right?
Yeah.
And and as that occurred, there's a sense of isolation because your village is now fractured. Even though you remember when you left East Texas, what that village looked like down the street, down the road, you could see everybody, you knew what was happening. So on the surface, I think what has happened is when your relatives, um, that close family, the traditions that you hold so closely in your family, that as you said, they weren't optional to the
Optional.
we were not optional. It's like we will be together on Easter Sunday. We will be together on every holiday that happens, and we will be celebrating. And so it has required the village of older Black Americans and those here in the Bay to become their own advocates in a system that really wasn't built for them. They have to be their own health advocates. I mean, we're a health foundation. Um, you have to re-explain your history to every new doctor that you see. There's not someone to go there with you to the doctor to help explain what's happening. And um, those central figures, I always like to tell folks that I was the one kid that wouldn't go out and play. I would hide under the table so I could listen to the older people talk and learn something so I would know something. I would know something else and then be able to tell everybody what they're supposed to do because I was that child. And so it's that wisdom and authority and that presence around to shape the community that happened by hiding underneath the table that you got to hear and absorb. You absorbed it in your soul of, oh, this is the right thing to do. This is not the right thing to do. And I feel like what has been the challenge as we have to recalibrate, the one thing that you've said to me, and I believe this so heartily, you first have to tell yourself the truth of what hasn't happened and what your role has been in
Yeah.
this, where we are right now. I got to take full responsibility of that. If there's one thing my dad always said is take responsibility for your own stuff. So you got to take responsibility and say, okay, what did I do? Well, I moved away. I didn't keep close contact with my cousins. We see them at the family reunion. I kind of know what's going on, but I don't know their lives in that sense of I could pick up the phone and call them. I made a new life in a new place that I lived. And therefore, that wisdom of what our elders had taught us to get through all these trials and tribulations that they went through Jim Crow and all of that to get out of the South, right? Or to stay in the South but thrive, right? Because you can do both, you know, that history had been lost. And so I think about our isolated elders here in San Francisco. Um, I think about the churches. You know, church was not optional. This was not something you got to decide if you wanted to go, if you didn't want to go. That was not an optional thing. You went on Sundays, two services. You went on Wednesday night, and you went on Saturday. So to whatever activity that was going on. Now you have less intergenerational gathering spaces that are lost through displacement. But this is what I see happening and being recalibrated. And I want to get to this. And what is the possibilities that are happening? The first and foremost, there are intergenerational spaces being intentionally recreated for us to recreate the village based on the culture that we know has supported us for centuries. Okay, so here in San Francisco, there's a, um, an organization called Booker T. Washington that's been around for over 100 years. It's a cornerstone in the community. They have intentionally created intergenerational living with transitional age youth and elders. And there is by design programming for them to do and live together and get that wisdom back into the spirits of our young people, our
Yeah.
younger people, and have them understand that what you're going through, as you said, you stick around long enough, it's going to come back and it's going to look the same, might be a little bit different. And then their wisdom and technology and all this other, the new things can be shared with our elders. And so it is a wonderful organization that, from a philanthropic perspective, when we see things in community, where we get to invest in that to make it not so hard to try to put pieces of money together to make things happen or do everything from a contract based perspective. In this way, we as a philanthropic organization, we have, I call it the money that helps do innovative work in community. It is not tied to, we do what's called in philanthropy trust based philanthropy with a racial equity lens here in San Francisco. And that means that we invest in organizations who, um, they know what the answer is that their community wants, but they may not have the financial resources to do it. So we trust that they know what the community wants. We provide general operating support grants for them to do it, and we uh, put very limited restrictions on it, meaning you tell us what's working and what you've learned, and we will continue to support that. So the community has what they want, and they don't just get what they get, which is one of my sayings.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't just give me get what you get. So anyway, I want to go and
But
basically,
Janice, I gotta pause there because we're talking here. There's so much richness that I just want to name, in what you just said. And the first is accepting responsibility, because unfortunately, a significant part of our culture is about blaming someone else. And while there may be other factors that have contributed,
mm-hmm,
I have a responsibility also. I chose not to go to that family reunion. I chose not to go. I did some things. I made some choices and some selections along the way that I have to own. The other thing is, uh, the importance of intentionally recreating things
yes,
with an updated lens to it is so very important. I write in the book and talk about as often as I can this notion of reciprocal wisdom sharing.
mm-hmm,
And so older adults are not just relics of the past, There are actually ways that they can contribute to being architects of the future. But there's also some brilliance and ingenuity in younger people that brought together create these wonderful, this wonderful potential for impact and change. But we have to do it intentional. And one of the things that's important to me in this notion of recalibrating the village is all of these anchors and institutions in our communities. We are better served when we're all on the same page and
Mm,
thinking about the importance of my role as the church in the village, my role as a sorority or fraternity in the village, my role as an entrepreneur, my role as a nonprofit. My role is important, but how do I fit in creating this village that allows everybody to thrive, especially our elders?
yeah, so true, so true. Yeah. Is there a? Looks like we have a
Yeah.
great question coming from the audience. Um, what is one opportunity? This is coming from the audience. What is one opportunity that we may be overlooking? And I'm gonna uh,
Yeah.
start with you, Raymond, and then I'll add on anything else that I think we might be overlooking in the village, as I like to say.
So I think the opportunity that I would hope we not overlook is the ability to simplify this or bring it to its least common denominator.
Hmm.
And so the village starts in my house, if possible.
Hmm.
And so one of the things that, as I started to write, Janet, there were two things that I did. First of all, I said this has to start with Black elders. This shift from advocacy to activism, where our voices are amplified, where we speak to the world that we want to live is important. But secondly, the families or infrastructure that are around aging Black people in this country uh, are the beginnings of the village. And
Hmm.
they are the conveners and orchestrators of the village. And so it begins with simple conversations in our house. What is aunt or uncle or grandma or my older cousin? What are the needs? Who needs to be in this village? Who's the doctor? Is there food being delivered? Is there a center they go to? Are they a part of a Greek letter organization?
Hmm.
Are they active in the neighborhood association? And how do we make certain that all of these folks are involved in this conversation around the well-being and the thriving of this elder in our midst? And so for me, it's uh, simplifying it to its least common denominator.
Yeah, I totally understand that, and I also would say, and I'm going to add on to that a little bit. Um, we all not only just the responsibility, but it's the intentionality of what you choose to do with your time
Yeah,
and who it is that you're willing to give your time to, um, and seeking to um, create that space. So, do you make time to reconnect with those folks you may have gone to college with, but they've been here and fro, and they're part of your community that got you where you are. But where are they now, and what are you doing? I also think that there is a call to um, organizations. Um, not just our sororities and fraternities and the churches and all of that, but it's a call to those leaders in philanthropic organizations to provide that space for people to come together where it's a safe space for people to share what their needs are without judgment
yeah,
of uh, I don't have or you're not showing up quite right. This is the in my opinion, I think this is one of the things that has been adopted in our culture of judgment of have we I've made it, are you going to make it? And the question is, are we going to make it? Because we got to this place to be on the screen having this conversation because of who came before us. It is not because of any one thing that you or I did that this space has been created. And so in I believe that we not only have a responsibility, but it's the accountability to ourselves and the village and the culture that we have as Black people to understand and to not only intellectually understand, but that our
Yeah.
actions need to be around how we care for the whole and not worry about this individualistic society where you're supposed to be able to take care of yourself all by yourself. And then you're going to find out that you're lonely by yourself because no one is there. And so for me, it's like, how do we recreate, recalibrate how we care for the culture of Black people, where it is much more expansive than I'm going to worry about just me and my three or four family
Yes.
members. So that's the one thing that I am looking so forward to as we
So
have.
I don't think that there is um, anything good about the current climate and efforts that emanate from all across this country that seeks to devalue people. But one of the realities is, I think it is causing people to reconsider the notion of community and family and
Mhm.
being in relationship with other people.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so we have there's another question that's coming. What do you think about policy advocacy and what policies this is coming from the audience and what policies would strengthen these networks of collective care? Any thoughts?
So again, another wonderful question. I will go back to something I said just a moment ago. I have a chapter in the book on the shift from advocacy to activism. I think intentional models and approach that equip Black elders and their families with the capacity to advocate for the world they want to live in is important. You know,
Mhm.
one of the joys of my life was the year I got to work with Carlene Davis and the Sankofa Elders Project in South LA, developing this manifesto for well-being. You know, Meta was one of the investors, along with Scan and Archstone and others, to create these eco groups, these uh, organizing in communities, equity community organizing groups, and to see Black elders. I was in one meeting, and the statement was made that Black elders matter. We matter. You know what we think matter, and that revelation, that epiphany almost for people for 50 to 60 Black folks all over the age of 60 in a room, that my voice still matters, not just to say what I want, but to benefit my community and those who are part of mine. And so I think a really important shift is, how do we begin to position older Black people so that their voices are heard and that they influence the decisions we make, the programming that we initiate? And so
Mhm.
I think that that's an important shift. I also think, uh, as you have done, you know, investing in intentionality,
Mhm.
you know, saying that we believe that intergenerational connections matter, we believe that strong networks matter, and these are the things that we are looking for in the investments that we are making.
Right.
And so I think that there's a role for people and community organizations. I think that there's a role for philanthropy, and I think the aging network, those people who provide services
Mhm.
to older folks broadly and older Black folks specifically, need to look at their policies and practices that inhibit the grounding and growth of collective care networks.
Hmm. Yeah, there's so much wisdom to be gained by just listening and having people, having elders share their stories of what has worked for them and what has been missing, and that we build to that, as opposed to building what we think they people want without listening to what it is that they tell you that they want. And we have a large system of this is what you get, and we get to work on that part of listening and providing people what it is that they want. In your
Jay,
view,
let me share one last
go
thing
ahead.
on that point is we have to train our ears to hear differently.
Mm,
Today, I had a conversation with a wonderful group of Black elders in Denver. Uh,
okay.
a work that we're doing in Denver, because I shared with them I did not want our work to become conversations about Black elders in their absence. And so I wanted to ground test the emerging conversation in a safe space, a container just for their voices. And if I am really honest, about 10 minutes into the call, I found myself getting a little frustrated because there wasn't this flow and rhythm. And then I realized
Mm,
that this is a different conversation and I need to listen differently, uh, because the communication is different, and it ended up being one of the most enriching conversations and insightful conversations on practical steps that are being considered, but
mhm.
it required something of me in order to create a space to receive their wisdom.
Ooh, that's powerful.
Hmm.
Being able to slow down and not work at the same speed that you might always work at.
Yes.
Um, it is training yourself to listen. You know, there's listening, there's hearing, and there's like living what it is that you're hearing. And I feel like that is definitely a art,
Yeah.
not a science of how we listen with our full selves and our hearts coming out first so we can hear what people are trying to tell us in our heart.
Yeah.
So, as we revitalize the village and serve as a catalyst for improving the quality of life and advancing equity for older Black Americans, um, how what do you think are kind of some of the, um, I'll call it first steps we should take? What would be your, I'm going to ask this, what would be your request of philanthropy, since I'm assuming there's some of those folks out there on this call? What would be your request of community members as they are seeking to listen to themselves and say, what has been my participatory responsibility in this as we were trying to recalibrate the village? It's like I'm really curious about, um, what do you think can help us catalyze and improve this quality that we're looking for in advancing equity for older Black Americans? Because
Yeah. There are two I words that you mentioned earlier that I think are really important when it comes to philanthropy. And I know that they are not just words you share because I've seen firsthand you live them out. And one was in innovation. We can't keep recreating the same thing. And we can't continue to just tweak around the margins. That's why the subtitle of the book is A Radical Reimagination of Aging and Race in America. I think we are really going to have to think radically about what is it that we need to do to recapture that which works and to add to it that which is will take us into the future. And so innovation and being willing to invest in innovation for these important anchor institutions, Janet, it's requiring of us to say, I got to do something different. If I'm a part of a neighborhood association, or if I'm a part of a community-based organization, or if I am running a nonprofit, or if I own a small business, or if I am leading a faith community, I have to understand that there is a huge demographic shift that is underway. And there will be an increasing number of older people, older Black people who are part of my community. And
Mm,
so, what do I need to do differently
mhm,
to allow them to stay connected and to thrive? I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. I am so thrilled that I'm working with the local Baton Rouge alumni chapter on a pilot initiative that's around how do we help brothers thrive into old age as members of the fraternity.
yeah.
And we are piloting a strategy. So,
Mm,
how do we do things differently while holding on to our identity and the values that make us different? And so, this willingness to innovate is important. But the other word that you've used a couple of times, Janet, is intentionality. We have to be really clear on what it is that we're doing and how we're going to go about doing it. It's not going to just happen.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not good.
it's not going to just happen. We have to be very intentional about how we do these things.
Yeah.
The second part that I think it's really, really important is that we are going to have to invest in uh, and support, and I use that word in a very different context here, Black elders. We are going to need to redeclare Black elders as a treasured community resource.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that has implications for people, for communities, for organizations, but it also has a responsibility for aging Black people.
Mhm.
Because being an elder is not a unidimensional construct. I don't just get to receive respect and elevated stature without owning some responsibility to my community and to the future of my community.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's this innovation, there is this intentionality, but there is this also this elevating and supporting Black elders to play important roles in our communities.
Yeah, we definitely believe that. Here we are seeing it being recreated in spots around the city. There are fewer Black elders in the city than there were, you
Yeah,
know, years ago, a couple decades ago. However, the ones that are here are um, intentionally being seen and heard, and we are providing resources to make that easier. It San Francisco is a small little city, but it's hard to get from one place to the next when there's long bus rides and all of that to get to your doctor's
yeah,
appointments and the like. So um, I do see hope with the blending of intentionality and innovation. And let's be real, we need money to do that. And
yes,
there and but really, you got to get your mind right first. I think things as, as I'm aging, all I think about are the things that my parents would say or my grandparents would say, and it's like, get your mind right. He's like, you
yeah,
got to get your mind right in order to then see this as a possibility. And that's what I loved about reading your book. It's like the possibilities that are there instead of talking about what's missing and all of that. There's so much wisdom and so many uh, elements of history that can help you know where those roadblocks may be so that you can move forward. So, I have a lot of hope for our
yeah.
future. I have a lot of hope. And I think it's going to come in unexpected places because, things that I have seen here in the city, I've seen um, elders using technology in their prayer circles, Zoom and
Mm.
caregiving groups on WhatsApp. So, like you said, it has to look different. It's going to look different because we can't keep using those old technologies, or you got to have a landline phone in order to talk to someone. That's not it anymore. You know what I mean? There are applications and there's your cell phone. So I see what gives me hope are the young activists.
Yes.
I think our young people know how to be activists, and with the wisdom of our elders, with that, to not just be running in any old way, but running in a way that can produce results, right? Um, I think that is connecting to housing justice and food justice and elder care, and not thinking of things from a silo perspective. Like everybody lives diverse, complicated, inner inner what's the word I'm thinking about? Not inner
Interconnected, interwoven.
lives, right?
Yes.
And as you think about that, um, there's so much possibilities of what networks you tap into to bring your best self. I'm glad to meet a Kappa. I'm an AKA. Got I go back and see my sorority sisters, and we're still in contact. And the question is, what can we do together and remember all the things that we did while we were pledging, and all the possibilities that were created that we didn't think were possible during that time.
Yes.
So
Well,
anyway.
I am hopeful as I see people uh, just really leaning into purpose and being purposeful in their actions. And I think that one of the things that's incumbent upon so many of us who are active in these spaces is not insisting upon it being my way or
Mhm.
my model or my this. If somebody is doing something, and Janet, I argue passionately for this in the book. If somebody is doing something that is having impact, we need to replicate it.
Yeah.
And we, I mean, we need to do the trainings to ensure fidelity, but we need to replicate what makes a difference uh,
Mhm.
as broadly as we possibly can. And we don't have the luxury anymore of me doing my thing because I feel passionately about it if it's not making a difference in the lives of people. And so I am hopeful because I see people out here just doing stuff uh, that's informed by real life outcomes for people, and I am hopeful that we will begin to build and expand upon what is working, because not everything is broken, not every family is dysfunctional, and not every Black elder is broken down.
Yeah.
There are things that are working. We just have to amplify
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely, there's the rituals that we have that have worked, be it your daily prayer routine or daily
them.
meditation, that builds strength. One of the things that I do, I think I talked earlier about my siblings. It's like I talk to one of my siblings every morning before I come to work. It's just, it's like, so, our one of my favorite lines is, "So what do you have on tap for today? Like, what are you
Yeah.
doing?" They're all retired, and it's like I just want to make sure it's like that checking in. Are what are you doing? All right. And no, you need to go out and do something because you're not going to just stay at home all day. And so, checking on family and holding this care of belonging to each other, and then taking those things, as you say, that others are doing, that's working and creating impact within their intentional village, right? Their intentional village. And there is so much for us to, you had said earlier about learning. I forgot what term you used about the learning between the generations.
Reciprocal wisdom sharing.
Yeah, reciprocal wisdom sharing. That is very, very powerful. And we see it at work when you put older and younger people together, and just the way that we have different skills that we bring to the table, right? Different skills, different ways of being. And when you are open to that, right? When you're open to that, there is such great possibilities for the thriving of the Black community and of Black elders when
Yeah.
we listen to what it is that they need and what it is that we can provide. So, Raymond, this is, I can't thank you enough for having written this book. It is so timely. It is what we need in community. I know you said it very modestly and humbly that this was, you didn't write this to be a best-selling author, but I'm telling you, this is a book that many people should have and take and read a chapter a day, read a chapter a month, but spend some time with it so you can understand what your contribution can be to the recalibration of the village, to the recalibration and telling your own truth to yourself as we do things. I want to just ask, are there any other questions out there in the audience? We have a few more minutes, and there's always so much to say. Um, Thank you for another great thought and challenges that we can take on. Oh, thank you. Uh, Great
Thank
dialogue.
you, Velma.
Thank you very much, Velma. Um, uh, I am thinking about all the people watching out there who are caregivers, community organizers, family members, trying to figure this out. What do you want them to know about their own power to be in the village builders? And what should they remember as they go back into their communities? This is my closing question to you.
You just mentioned something that resonated with me in ways that you certainly don't know and will have only an idea when I say this. When you talked about calling one of your siblings before you go to work, think about how low tech, low demand, but significantly impactful that is. Because just a simple, what's on tap for today? You know your siblings. You can sense when something's wrong. If somebody's not well, you can make certain they are checked on. That's the simplistic importance of the village.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can all do something, and it doesn't require a big organization, or we can all begin to act in ways that connect us with people around us. And it could be as simple as saying, here are my 5 people, and I'm going to call one of them a day, Monday through Friday, and check on them.
Yeah.
It can be as simple as that.
Yep. Yep.
Uh, and so we are all part of this. We all have a role.
Yes.
Somewhere near the end of the book, I write that, Aging While Black will continue to be written, but not on those pages, in the actions that we take and the things that we do. And so I just want to encourage people to start writing your chapter.
Thank you so much. This has been such a rich conversation, Raymond. I know our viewers have gained so much insight into the challenges and the extraordinary possibilities of recalibrating the village and Black communities. The work you're doing while aging while Black isn't just changing how we think about aging, it shows us pathways to collective strength and community care that can benefit us all. Before we close, I want to turn it over to you to tell the audience what's coming next in the series and how they can stay connected to this important movement.
Thank you so much, Jen. Just this has been a joy. It's been a wonderful time to let these folks and people who will be able to access this recording, to let them listen in on one of our conversations. And so, thank you for joining me in this space. We have one more of these virtual series to come. And it's on September 18th, same time, 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Mountain, 3 p.m. Pacific. And Catherine Buell, who has talk about innovation, she is doing some really important work at the intersection of wellness, aging, and housing. Uh, and we're going to use Catherine's work and way of seeing things as an impetus for the importance of innovation in aging while Black. So I would invite you to join us on the 18th, same time, for another conversation. I'd also invite you to go to agingwhileblack.co, for more information about the movement, purchasing the book, or other Aging While Black paraphernalia. And so, my dear friend Janet Spears, I am grateful to you and thank you so much for this time together.
Yes, thank you. It's been wonderful. And thank you for our behind the scenes tech and for all of you that joined us today. Um,